Welcome back to the Post Beat podcast. This is episode 6. It's been a little while since we've actually recorded an episode, but luckily we had a couple in the bank, so it's only been a couple of weeks that we've been off air. How are you, Jack? What have you been up to?
Yeah, trying to stay dry. It's been a very wet start of the year, hasn't it? I don't think it's stopped raining for about a month and a half, which has
Good
created
news.
some personal car issues based on the weather. But before we get into that, how's your start of the year been so far?
My start of the year has been pretty good. Pretty good. I've been working sort of when I get half an hour or an hour here and there. I've been working around my 911, polishing it ready for the spring unveiling, which is now 9 days away. So yeah, I've hit it with the machine polisher that I bought a couple of years ago at Waxstock, and covered it with a Geon can coat ceramic coating. So yeah, it's looking very clean and ready to go.
I was going to say I've seen some pictures on social media. It looks exceptional. Looks like you could eat your dinner off that now. I wouldn't want to take it outside. That'd be my biggest. I wouldn't want to get it dusty or any stones on it. I'd want to keep it, all wrapped up now, given the effort and the work that you've done. So how long does that ceramic coat typically last for?
Um, on the box, they say up to a year. I find that they hardly ever last as long as they say they're going to, but I'm very much hoping that it's going to see me through the season, and then over next winter, if I need to, I'll take it back, polish it, and put a new one on for 2027, assuming
Nice.
all's
So
well.
we can be at polar ends of the spectrum when it comes to car care and car cleaning. We met up a few weeks ago, didn't we? And you got in the Range Rover and you saw how dusty the dashboard was, and I think that gave you anxiety.
Yeah,
You don't want to. I'll post a picture later on, but you don't want to see the state of my wife's car, which is where I've had some dramas over the last week or two. I haven't washed it. I know this will give you nightmares, but I haven't washed it since probably the back end of September, October this year. So it's not been clean for about 5 months. It's got all sorts of stuff stuck to it. It's disgraceful. I'm embarrassed. So I'll put my hands up and tell you
should
that that's not good practice. That's not generally how I like to look after my stuff. It's just been a very busy couple of months for us with all the kids and Christmas, and then stuff that we've been doing New Year and businesses and work and stuff. It's just been a really, really busy time. But I do plan to get out this weekend, and I'm going to give it its first wash of the year. So I'll send you some pictures of before and
Very good.
after.
Very good. It's also, I mean, as you say, it's been so wet. It's like, is it even worth it? I mean, I did one wash on the Jag that was literally just a touchless, did a snow foam, rinsed it off, and then the wife got in the car and drove off. And I was just like, there's no point in even doing more than that at this time, because it's just
No,
rained constant. So
I've got a question
yeah.
for you though. Why the 1st of March as the kind of date you want to dust the Porsche off and get it out on the road? Why is it that particular day?
Um, I guess because I'm tight, and if I were to untax it now, for example, if we had a sunny day tomorrow, I'd have to pay for the whole month of February's tax. And now that we're on the 20th, and I'm actually going abroad for work next week anyway, um, yeah, I'm sticking to next Sunday, the 1st of March, unless it's really terrible weather. It's coming out on the 1st of March, come what may. I've blocked it in the diary, so it's coming out on the 1st of March.
And that
Uh,
will be it then. So it will live out until what, October, November, before it gets
I
kind of
think so.
gritty
So
next
this
year.
year I tucked it away in November, at the start of November. Um, I think I could have got away with a bit longer, to be honest, because the salt didn't start going down on the roads until mid-November, like late November. So I might stretch it out another month this year, because 4 months has felt like a very long time. But I don't actually regret my decision, and I'm really excited about bringing it back out again. Whereas if I'd have driven it on and off throughout the winter, I probably wouldn't have that level of anticipation. So
Mm.
yeah, T minus 9 days to go.
Nice. Let's cover that on another episode. I think I'd be really keen to see what plans you've got for it later on this year, because getting that back out on the road is going to be epic, especially after all that time. So yeah, talking of weather, my car dramas this last couple of weeks have been the potholes. I think everyone's talking about it. The state of the roads is just terrible at the moment here in the UK. We live just outside, or just outside the M25, southeast of England, just outside London. And there's some roads that are impassable where I am now. They're so bad that luckily we've got two, I guess, SUV quite high up cars. But if we had if I had the 911, for example, or even the M3, I'd be in serious trouble down some of these roads where people are having to go on the other side of the road to avoid them. And I was coming back from a kids club, so I was taking my daughter dancing, and it was chucking it down. It was again biblical rain that we've had over the last month. We had a really wet evening. It was dark, so you can't see all the potholes, especially at speed on like a B road and an A road, which is the majority of the roads where we live. And came around this corner and hit one, and it was a crater. I mean, these
Mm.
are 20, I think they're 21-inch Q7 wheels, and it ate the entire wheel. Luckily, didn't do any damage to the suspension because I was only doing about 15 mile an hour at the time.
Yeah,
But it took a little chip out the wheel. Luckily, the wheel's not buckled, but it created a little bubble on the edge of the tire wall.
yeah.
And I know they can be super dangerous.
Did you get
Because
the
it
car
can.
back home?
It did, yeah. The
Oh,
tire didn't deflate or anything like that, and luckily I was only a minute from my front door, so I managed to get it home and then just took it straight into the tire place the following morning. But again, didn't need that bill, and the two rear tires were kind of on the edge anyway, so I was kind of thinking, well, probably going to have to replace them at some point. So I had a really big tire bill this week,
so you did all
which
four?
yeah, which wasn't fun, and which
Yeah,
was again they're not cheap because I wanted them all to match, and they're Pirelli. What are they? All season. I think they're the P0 all season tires for SUVs, so they're the extra load high
yeah,
weight ones. So they're about £300 plus per corner. So again, it was an expensive, unplanned
yeah,
cost this last week. And then on top of that, to make matters worse, and I think that goes down to just the damp and the weather, and probably partly the reason why you've got the 911 in the garage still is just because it's so damp. And what we noticed was the underneath, so the kind of undercover of the engine, the kind of plate that sits underneath the engine, that the engine bay was just hanging down. And I was getting flashed on the main road coming home again from probably a kids club, because I feel like an Uber driver at the moment, running the kids around everywhere, and can hear all this sort of stone noise, and it was almost dragging along the bottom of the ground. So again,
oh wow,
propped it back up, but it was just completely disintegrated because again it was just so soaked. It's been so wet, and it's almost like a sponge that it just gave. I mean, it's about eight. I think the car's about 7 or 8 years old, so I think they start to deteriorate anyway. And so I just need to buy a new under tray or a new undercover
yeah.
for the front of the car. So again, these aren't mechanical expenses. Nothing wrong necessarily with what Audi are doing. It's just a case of the state of the roads and the weather at the moment in the country.
Yeah, yeah. Doesn't make me not regret driving the 911 super regularly. Also, on that front, I've mentioned on one of the previous podcasts, I bought the Jag to smoke around in the winter, but at the moment, I'm actually thinking of just keeping it and running three cars all year round again for like keeping the 911 for those special occasions. Still absolutely plan to use it a lot, and I've booked a couple of trips in already for this year in it. I've booked a mini track day at Bicester, and I'm taking it to Le Mans Classic, which I'm super excited about, and hopefully packing a couple of other bits as well. But just having that option of a third car, you know, I've recently started working somewhere that's like half an hour drive away on the motorway. I don't really want to be doing 50 miles a day in that car unnecessarily. So I think at the moment I'm planning on keeping it, but I want to have a good look at the underside first to decide whether I'm going to keep it for summer or if it's better to pass it on to someone else that can deal with it. Because it is 16 years old now. So I'm going to try and have a look underneath and I'll let you know how that goes.
Well, that's a
Um,
great segue into our topic for this week, right? Which is all about selling cars.
yes, it is. It is not that I'm planning on selling yet, but yeah, we wanted to talk about selling cars for sure. Just before we do, though, should we just touch on automotive news this week? I saw the launch of the new RS5. I saw on Joe Achilles' channel because I tend to watch most of his stuff, and that car looks really, really appealing to me for a brand new car. It was one of the first cars I've seen in a while where I'm like, I really like that, and I think that looks really good. Obviously, it's heavy because it's a hybrid, and I think it's 2.3 tons or something, which is not super appealing. But I think the looks of the car, particularly the back end of and the general shape of the Touring or the Avant, for me looked really good. Did you see it? What did you think?
Oh, it's epic, isn't it? just trying to work out the proportions of it because does it play in the kind of M3, M4 territory, which I think it has done historically, or is it pushing up towards maybe M5 touring territory? So yeah, really, I mean, beautiful looking design. The one thing I'm not over is the rear diffuser. I don't know what these German car manufacturers are doing with the back ends of these cars. I think everything above the exhaust pipes looks great, but that kind of rear diffuser, a little bit like we were talking about in a previous episode around the M5, I
Yeah,
can't get my head around. They've got some
it's
some
stuck on.
funny, yeah, some funny looking carbon weave in that diffuser. But apart from that, I think it's an absolutely stunning car. I'd love to take one for a drive.
I'm still not mad on these interiors though that are just, I mean, when I saw a picture of the interior, it's just all screen the whole way across. And funnily enough, I actually work in car entertainment, and the bigger screens is like a blessing for me because it gives me lots of opportunities to launch new technology on TV screens. But as a car driver, it's not really what I want. And one of the interesting things that I've seen that I'm sure you've seen as well is this Ferrari Luce interior concept that's come out. So they haven't actually released the car, but they've shown pictures of the interior, and that looks awesome. Like it's a really good mix of like bringing back in tactile, touchable buttons, albeit with a kind of iPhone-esque modern layout. I think that looks great.
Yeah, they got the old Ferrari steering wheel, haven't they? It almost
Yeah,
looks like it's wooden. It looks like it's an original, 250 GTO. So yeah, that's I think that's there's a market for that because I think for everyday purposes, for commuting and for 90% of what most people use their cars for, I think the infotainment and the screens are probably quite useful and quite intuitive. But I think for real drivers, real petrol heads, we almost want that analog feel, don't we? But still with that reliability, that modern touch. But we don't want so many screens. We might just have one screen and some analog, some buttons, and
yeah,
a nice feeling steering wheel and a good gear stick as well, and some good pedals. That's all we want. So
yeah,
yeah, I think there's value in that. I saw an AI video of that actually, but it was turning the wrong way to the road, so I was like, still not there yet.
yeah.
I guess in other news I've seen as well is that again I only saw this today, but Singer headlining the Festival of Speed this year, which again we were talking about this in a previous episode
Mm,
around attending these type of events, and typically like you, I probably attend every other one, so I normally leave a gap and
yeah,
probably. But I think yeah, given the fact Singer are there and they've got some really special stuff coming out this year, and some previous some great looking cars they've launched over the last 5 or 6 years, that would definitely draw me as a Porsche fan, as a Singer
yeah.
fan. So yeah, trying to going to go and get some tickets, I think, after this.
Yeah, yeah, I love Singer, and I love the new convertible cabriolet that they've teased recently in photos. I just think that's awesome, and it's good to see that they've done a convertible as well. So yeah, very good. One final thing that I saw today that I thought I'd mention because it was probably the best YouTube video that I've seen in the last couple of years was a video about a guy who has had an F40 Ferrari F40 for the last 22 years and his experiences with owning that car, the purchase story. It's by the channel Supercar Driver. Came out on Thursday, the 19th of Feb, I think. So have a look at that video. I won't go on about it too much, but it was yeah one of the most interesting YouTube videos I've seen for a long, long time, and a proper petrol head in someone that buys two F40s before they decide to buy a house. So fair play to that guy. Very cool. So yeah, today's topic is selling cars, and we talked about it just before we hit record. But our track record of how we've sold cars in the past, interestingly, is like almost complete polar opposite. So you from what you told me are largely a trade-in guy or have been in the past, and I when I look back at my selling history is almost all private sales. So do you want to talk us through a little bit about why trade in, the different types of options you've used? I think you've done a sale and return once before. Um,
Mm.
whether you want to keep
Yeah,
doing that in the future, probably
I
not.
yeah, I think you've given me some great coaching on this, to be honest with you, and I think I've seen a lot of value in some of the stuff that you've shared with me over the last sort of year in terms of how you've sold and moved cars on, and I think I've just gone down the convenience route. So I think in total I counted that I've sold 18 vehicles. Sound like a car salesperson now, don't I? So I think in my history, I've sold 18, out of which about 50% of those have been part exchanged
Yeah,
for my sins. And I think that probably done that. Majority of those part exchanges have been done out of convenience because it felt like it was the right thing to do given the type of car it was. There wasn't a huge amount of value in a lot of the cars that I've part exchanged. The most recent being a Discovery 5, which we had a lot of problems with, and it was
yeah,
almost trying to get out of it without any hassle. Like I wouldn't have felt right selling that car on the private market because of the amount of issues that it would have had, and I just
yeah,
wouldn't want the I wouldn't want to give that to anybody that I knew, and I wouldn't want the fear of someone coming back to me, a few weeks down the line to say, "Look, another light's come on," or "There's this problem." So I think
yeah,
I'd say 50% of those Part X's have probably been out of convenience and laziness, but then there's been a few there that are either high mile cars or cars that have potentially got issues, and almost the dealer takes that risk away and can sometimes blend that into the deal or how they ever want to frame it, but it just takes the hassle of having to sell on the driveway. I
yeah.
guess the best experiences I've had though are kind of, I guess, the eBay experience. I'd say the next platform that I've used apart from part Xing is obviously eBay, and not not auction eBay, but classified eBay. And what's really interesting, I've ran that alongside Auto Trader, and I've had more interest when I've advertised the car at the same price on both platforms. I've had way more interest, way more inquiries on eBay than I have from Auto Trader, even though they've been listed at the same time at the same price, with the same descriptions. So I get more traction from eBay, funnily enough, and that's just my personal experience. And I had more success more so recently there. And
Is
then
that
you
on a
mentioned
is that on a variety of cars and a variety of level of price points, or is that at the lower price point, or
no, good. Yeah, good point. I mean, I sold the most recent was the M3 that I sold on there, and had a lot of inquiries on there the second I listed that car. Perhaps I sold it a bit too cheap. I feel now, looking back in reflection to it, but because I think the prices of those E92 competitions are starting to
yeah,
increase. But in hindsight, there wasn't really a lot of hassle. I had a few people you could tell immediately when they message you, are they going to be a tire kicker? Or are they going to be serious? And you almost, I actually took that car. There was a guy that bought it off me in the end, but he wanted to meet halfway between his house and my house, and it was a lovely end of summer. It was like a September hot day, and I thought, I just want an excuse to take the car out again. So I actually drove to Mercedes Benz World, met him. They had a good look at the car, but it was happy for me to drive it. I took him on a test drive in the car, and then he went away, had a think about it, and he came back the next day, made an offer, put a deposit down, and then he came and collected it 4 or 5 days later. And again, I think there's certain cars that you have a certain following, and maybe at a certain price point. I've got other cars, like I sold the Discovery 3, I think I mentioned in a previous
yeah.
episode, which I bought off eBay and sold it back on eBay and probably made a few hundred quid in the process. So for the lower end, I found it an easy platform, and I've sold quite a few like lower end valued cars on there, but I haven't done
Yeah.
anything above the M3 in terms of value. How about
Okay.
yourself?
I I don't think I've ever done a trade-in, which I was really surprised about when I look back at my selling history. So I've pretty much done all of my car sales privately. And that being a mix of, one was to a neighbor who was looking for a car for their son, my first car. I sold one on Piston Heads. Have sold a couple on Auto Trader, and then my last three sales have actually been just on Instagram. So a couple of years ago, when I got my M340D Touring, it was brand new then, and there was quite a lot of interest in that car at the time. So I thought I'll start my own car Instagram so that I wasn't continually posting every Saturday pictures of me washing my car to my non-car friends on my personal Instagram who were just bored shitless of it. So I started a car Instagram about 4 years ago, mainly based on the M340D, but then started to bring in the other cars that I own and just building up stories about that, what I'm using the cars for, maintenance, cleaning, ownership, servicing, modifications, etc. And slowly over the years, built a small, steady following of fairly engaged people that like what I do. I think I've got about 1,000, so not big, but what that's meant is the last three cars that I've sold, all BMWs, they've all sold super quickly just off Instagram. So not paying any money to anyone else, dealing with people that know who I am. And those three sales have gone through really quickly to the point where my M4 sold last year in it was driven off the drive about 8 hours after I posted one Instagram story.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's what I've learned from you as part of this is how successful you've been doing that. And I almost want to go off now and build an Instagram on the range. I'll start there because I think that there's so much history, going back through when things have been done, the good things and the bad things, general maintenance, preventative maintenance. I think documenting all of that on a kind of a platform like Instagram, I think has so much power to it. And I think that, like the M3 story I think I told in a previous episode, see so much value buying from people. I think
mm,
it's the person and the way that they've kept the vehicle and that history and that story has a huge amount of weight and confidence when buying a car, especially of that era and that kind of cost. You
yeah.
want to know it's
And
been well looked
and one
after.
way you really want a well maintained one. It's just
Mm,
comforting to know that you're buying from someone who's kind of similar to you. And I think that's partly where selling my last three cars has been a bit more straightforward because people have confidence in the ownership history, and we've talked about ownership history in one of the previous podcasts. But yeah, I think if you have a mechanism and a way of like demonstrating that you've been a good owner, and you can almost somehow vet or reduce the amount of like time wasters that you could deal with, I think that's an interesting concept, particularly for you know higher maintenance specialist sports cars, etc. I would always try and rather buy from someone who I get to meet them.
mm.
So,
The
yeah,
story, yeah, and I guess that leads on to the other one of the other things that I've tried recently. So I've sold to a friend once, but I don't like the idea of that though, because again, I'd just be worried. Even if you have looked after the car really well and you've
yeah,
done everything you can, but something bad happened, a few months down the line that you just no one could have seen coming. You almost
yeah,
have a duty of care. You have a bit of so I again I try and avoid that one. But yeah, I think there's a huge amount of value in Instagram and documenting it and almost creating that story of that car over a 2 or 3 4 year ownership period and then almost passing that story on. Do you think there's value in actually passing on the Instagram as well? What do you do with the handle? Do you update the handle, keep the account, or do you
yeah.
think there's value actually passing the account owner over to that new person?
I've never seen anyone do that before. I have followed cars before, and then the new owner gets kind of tagged, and they say if you want to follow the car's journey with the new owner, here's who they are. So I've done that a couple of times. What I've
Mm,
done is I've just updated my handle as the cars have changed. So it started off as M340D Dravit because I just did the one car. Then it was M340D F82 when I had the M4, and now it's M340D.GTS. So yeah, I've just done it like that.
just keep going. I guess you keep the following though, which is good. So then you just keep
Exactly.
the yeah, and you keep building on that. So there's value there. The only other thing I have done, which was more recently with the 911, was a sale or return. And
Yep.
again, it's the first time I've done it, and it actually worked really well in the end. They typically will take. Well, firstly, the reason why I wanted to do it is because of the value of the vehicle at the time. So it was a Carrera, a 991.2 Carrera T, 2018. It'd only done, I think, 14,000 miles roughly when I sold it. So the mileage was very low. It was very, very well looked after. I was almost too paranoid. It was a complete polar
Yep.
opposite of recent car maintenance with the cars I got now. Where I
Yeah.
almost kept it in a garage and kept it under a cover most of the time and occasionally drove it. And so I wanted someone that knew what they're doing. So I actually took that to a local garage that specialised in primarily Ferraris. They've got a lot of really nice, I would say, early 90s to mid 90s. They've got a lot of, if you go on their website, they're called Slades in Penn, which is very close to where I live. And they deal directly. I think they've got a lot of 550 Maranellos. They've got 355s, 348s. So they kind of they're really specialist in that particular era of Ferrari, but they do a lot of other things and they've always got really fancy toys down there. And because it was at the end of my road, it was literally 2 minutes from where I live. I popped in there and said, look, would you guys be interested in a sale or return? And I think the reason why I wanted to do it, A, because they've got a big following as well, B, because it was super convenient. So it almost felt like I was selling it on my driveway. So every time I drove past it 2 or 3 times a day anyway, so I could keep an eye on it. The
Yeah.
guy was super flexible there. He said, if you need access to the vehicle, you can come and get it. You can use it if you need to, but ideally we want to have access to it as much as possible. So I let them keep it, and within, I think, 3 or 4 weeks, so within about a 3 to 4 week period, I had a few offers on it, and he ended up getting quite close to what we were asking for it. And in the end, because it was a returning customer that he kind of owed a bit of credit to, I think he ended up not charging an SOR fee. I don't know whether I should say that on the podcast or not, but it was wiped to do his client a favor to get the price to where it needed to be and stuff like that. So overall, actually, it worked out really, really well. It was a complete hassle-free experience from my point of view, and I think given the values, and I just wouldn't want to. I wouldn't feel comfortable at that value having someone around figuring out, how we transfer that sort of volume of money, and then obviously paying the vehicle off and all the rest of it. So he took all that stress off me, which is great, and put a warranty on it, which again, it was even better. Just dealt with all that hassle, really. So I definitely recommend that experience if you just don't want the hassle. But then equally, we haven't touched on other things that you've mentioned, James, like auctioning, which is where you bought your car from. So
I was,
again,
I was,
would you?
yeah, I was just about to mention that because you mentioned the transfer of money. So I talked about it on one of the previous ones, but I bought my 911 on collecting cars, and I know we're talking about more about selling here, but once you buy a car on collecting cars, you're basically they just say here's the owner's details, get in touch with them and work out the sale between you, and the rest of the sale goes like a normal private sale. You're committed up front because you have to pay a deposit, and you lose you basically your buyer's fee if you don't end up proceeding with the sale, which on the case of a 60 grand 911 is like, I think it was like 4 grand, something like that. So you're not going to pull out of the sale and lose 4 grand for nothing. Anyway, we had to do the whole, how are you going to transfer me 60 grand? And it's not really any different to transferring
Hmm.
someone 10 grand as it goes. There's maybe one call that you need to put into the bank, but that was actually, not too bad. But obviously it is a lot of money, and even on connecting cars, I guess you have that slight protection of the way that the buyers and sellers details are only shared after the winning bid happens. So you're reducing that level of kind of anxiety that someone's going to come and mess you around or rip you off, or God forbid, even worse than that. Um, but the only thing that I would say is collecting cars and similar sites, if the fees are relatively high, then the buyer is not getting the full retail price the seller is not getting the full retail price that they would be getting if they sold it private, because in my case about 4 grand of that money went to collecting cars, and therefore I thought about that when I was putting in my max bid, and I was like, well, if I bid at this, I've got to pay an extra four on top to collecting cars, and therefore I'm not going to bid the same as I would if I were buying the car private. So, does the seller really get more money by going to auction than they would on a trade-in? I think it's the differences are probably fairly slim. The guy that I bought it from said that he was just interested to see how collecting cars played out, and his view was that collecting cars, the amount that the seller gets splits the difference between a trade-in and a private sale. I think it's more towards the trade-in than the private sale personally. And given that most of the rest of the process is like a private sale, then I'm not sure that I would be jumping at going for that opportunity unless I had something like super rare and super niche that's going to drive a bidding war that otherwise wouldn't happen. But I mean,
I've got
these
a
platforms
friend
do
of
seem to be
mine.
popular.
Yeah, I know a few people that have had good experiences off that platform as well. Actually, there's a friend of mine that bought Chris Harris's old M2 competition from
Oh, the black
from
one.
from there, the black one with the gold wheels. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
before there was other issues with it, because I think that car's got a bit of history as well. But we actually saw that at the Bicester, one of the Bicester heritage events not too long ago and stuff, and it's all been rebuilt and repainted and stuff. But yeah, that he had that car for a while, and he said he had a similar experience to you. He had a great experience on that platform. So I think there's probably a demographic on there that appreciate cars that maybe are the right people to market to, and that's primarily maybe why you get good quality off the platform, perhaps. Whereas maybe with the general platforms like eBay and Auto Trader, you're going to open yourself up to everybody, right? And you might get a lot more time wasters, perhaps. I don't know. I just
That's what you
I've
would
had
hope.
that. Yeah, I've had good and bad experiences selling cars privately, and that's probably why I've gone down the part exchange route. Maybe primarily more is down to the fact that I remember, selling a 3 Series, a 320D BMW, nothing special. It was very bog standard. And I remember selling that on, I think it was eBay again, and just had loads of tire kickers. I think because it was about, at the time it was a 9 to 10 grand car. This was
Yeah,
probably 12, 13 years ago, and I just had so many time wasters come around, and they started, offering me, 20, 30, 40% of what I was asking for the car on the platform. And I was thinking, just
yeah,
wasting my time, wanted test drives, couldn't provide insurance documents. And I think a few of those experiences I've had maybe 10, 12 years ago have almost scarred me for life a little bit. Hence why I've probably gone down the PX route, because I'm like, I just can't deal with the hassle
yeah.
of that. I think you've changed my mind though. I think there's a lot of value in the social media elements and the Instagram. So yeah, don't worry. Watch this space and you'll see a Range Rover Sport One pop up in the next couple of weeks, and we'll start documenting the history around that.
Okay, nice. So we'll finish this episode with the way we usually try to, or we will for the next couple of episodes until we run out of ideas, on peak car. And given we're talking about selling, I think we should talk about what is selling like hotcakes at the moment. And I don't mean from a new perspective, but I've seen a couple of cars come up recently. Both I think listed by JZM, who are a Porsche specialist in Kings Langley, very well known, and they listed a 997 GT3 RS 3.8 liter recently. I think it was in PTS Mexico Blue, so very cool, very rare. They didn't even list a price; it was just POA. And again, similar to my experience in a much lesser car with my M4, um, that sold within 1 hour. That car. So
Wow.
yeah, they
Wow.
posted a story saying for sale, whatever, POA, and 1 hour later it said sold. So there's
I mean,
people out there that are ready to buy your PTS special 997 991 GT3 if you've
I
got
mean,
one.
but again, they've got a huge following. They're massive in the Porsche world, right? So I think
Yeah,
that's a great platform to advertise something special on, and I think they would relish something like that again, even as an SOR, I'd imagine, because that just stuff like that moves. And I think for me, it would be, you told the story about the guy with the F40. I'm still trying to convince my wife that we sell our house, we take all our equity and money out, and we buy a, I don't know, a Speciale, a 458 Speciale, which is, by the way, my dream car. If I had like a two car garage, unlimited budget, that would form at least 50% of the two car garage for sure, like within a heartbeat. And I think they're around the sort of 300, 350K mark at the moment. So, but I
okay.
do think that eventually they'll follow a similar path. In my opinion, I could be wrong, and this is not financial advice by any means, so please don't take it that way. But
Please don't
I
sell
think
your
they will
house.
be. Yeah, don't sell your house. Don't put your four kids on the street. But I would be really tempted to see where the values of those goes, because I know the Apertas at the moment are in the 750s, pushing up to 800s, which is crazy.
How can an Aperta be worth 4 times the amount of the
Or at
Berlinetta?
least at least double, yeah, at least 50. I think it's at least 100% more. So you can buy two Berlinettas for the same price of an Aperta, which is crazy. So I do think that there's an upward trend there. And I think, looking at the age of those cars, they're 20 years newer than the F40s, but they are still one of the natural aspirated, V8 screaming
Yeah,
Ferraris that they made of that era. So for me, that would be an interesting place to put some money if I had the money, but I definitely don't. Well, you never know. So you look at where the F40s are going, right? They're almost unattainable, because back in the day, 15 or so years ago, you could probably buy one for 350, 400, probably similar money to the Speciales
yeah,
today. And you think they're 2.5 million for a good one. And then you've got the 250 GTOs and that whole segment of market, which is
yeah,
20, 30, 40 million pound plus, right? They're crazy. So I do think the generation of people getting older, and the demographic of people looking at those type of cars, I think there's legs on the values of that, especially naturally aspirated manual. The peak, the
yeah,
stuff that we talk about all the time. I think there's a lot of value there.
yeah, yeah. Definitely opportunities. Just got to find those right gems. I think the harder bets are the ones that are at the more affordable level or
Mm.
semi-affordable level, and like, are they going to do well? Like, I hope that my 991.1 GTS will do well, given it's like the last naturally aspirated Carrera. It's got four seats. There hasn't been one since then, apart from the latest GT3 Touring that's got four seats and is naturally aspirated. So hopefully that will do well. It's never going to get to speciality levels, but hopefully it will do really
I,
reasonably
I
well.
think I think it's a numbers thing as well, though. You look at how many were made and how many are being made right now. Even if you take the GTS of your era and the GTS of the current era,
Yeah,
it was almost unlimited numbers now, isn't there? It's almost difficult to say exactly how many are out there. I think that's what's piqued my interest recently at a more attainable level for me is the E90 M3s. So I've
all right.
recently sold an E92, but there's a very immaculate one sitting on eBay at the moment for about 30K, and it's had all the work done, very low miles. It's black with silver wheels. It looks really nice, and that for me would be tempting right now, and they're already starting to appreciate. As I said, I think I probably let the
Definitely.
M3 go a bit too early, and I'm starting to see an upward trend there. So yeah, good
Watch
good
this
time.
space. Still waiting to
Yeah,
hear what you potentially end up getting on the drive for this summer. We'll see.
we'll see.
Nice one. Thanks very much, guys. We'll call it to a close there, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks for listening.
Take care.
Bye bye.